A major winter storm is sweeping across the central United States, bringing record snowfall to some areas. 60 million Americans are under weather warnings. The storm's set to bring the coldest temperatures in more than a decade. So far, 6 states have declared a state of emergency: Kentucky, Virginia, West Virginia, Kansas, Arkansas and Missouri. The National Weather Service says the system is expected to move east before subsiding within 48 hours.
What I want to show you though is that this roadway is very slick, very, very slick. So let me get some traction here and watch my feet here. Ready for this? That's what we're dealing with out here, and it's not getting any better, it's getting worse. So get off the roads, don't be on them.
The heavy snowfall has contributed to an avalanche in Utah, with dramatic video capturing the moment it smashed into a nearby vehicle. Up to 13 centimetres of snow fell per hour around the Little Cottonwood Canyon area, heightening the risk of avalanches and briefly stranding skiers. Travellers leaving and entering the country are facing significant disruption as Storm Blair sweeps across the country. More than 3,000 domestic inbound and outbound flights have been delayed and more than 1,000 cancelled. Kansas City International Airport and St. Louis Lambert International Airport in Missouri are the worst affected. Meanwhile, heavy snow and freezing rain has caused widespread disruptions across the United Kingdom and Europe. Liverpool's John Lennon Airport and Manchester Airport were forced to close runways, but both reopened shortly after. Roads have been heavily impacted as families return home from the Christmas and New Year breaks and students go back to universities. The UK Environment Agency has also issued 8 flood warnings across southern England on the River Tor and River Avon. Snow and ice are also causing havoc in Germany. Authorities there have issued black ice warnings for drivers and pedestrians and are advising people to stay home where possible. Frankfurt Airport has cancelled 120 flights, while Munich Airport has had only 1 runway open. The meteorologist Matthew Capucci joins us now from Washington, D.C. to tell us more about this. Matthew, let's start with where you are in the US. We've got tens of millions of people under winter alerts. What's happening at the moment?
Yeah, we really have a sprawling winter storm set to track about 2,200 kilometers from Kansas and the Central Plains in the middle of the United States all the way to the eastern seaboard, giving the worst of every season. On the system's warm side, we're seeing tornado weather right now. On the cold side, heavy snow, upwards of 30 centimeters, and it's the in-between zone where we're seeing that freezing rain that falls as a liquid, then freezes on contact with the ground, leading to a rime of dangerous glaze on the surface, up to about 1.5 centimeters thick in places, causing a widespread ice storm. So really the worst of every season with this storm, and it's a very widespread storm. One of the additional considerations, too, is that behind this storm, temperatures drop markedly. So all the folks who will have lost power, especially in the ice storm area, are set to drop below, say, 10 degrees Fahrenheit or roughly minus 10 Celsius for an extended period of time, resulting in very dangerous conditions. And I'm hoping that folks have some backup plans.
Yeah, now what is causing all of this?
Well, earlier in the weekend, or actually last week, we had a pocket of cold air, low pressure, and spin over the Northeast Pacific. And that system kind of dove over the western United States, passing over the Rockies. The pocket of spin helped lift the air ahead of it, causing a surface disturbance over the Central Plains. That surface disturbance sucked warm, moist air north out of the Gulf of Mexico, adding moisture for the storm, and on the backside, pulled down cold air from Canada. In between, where you had the cold air and the moisture, you got that severe weather, the winter weather, with the snow and with all the icing as well. But one other thing with this too, the system pulled north a little bit of warm air at the mid-levels, and that's why you were able to get rain falling, but then freezing when it hit the ground. So really the worst of kind of both worlds with this system.
And so what is the forecast there in the US?
Widespread snow, widespread sleet, and widespread freezing rain, really for, like I said, about 2,200 kilometers. Here in Washington, D.C., we're expecting our worst snowstorm since January of 2022, but a number of people are seeing their worst snowstorm in about 10 years, just given how widespread it is. I do think the tornado threat over the U.S. deep south should wane over the next few hours, but the snow threat is increasing, and even in the mid-Atlantic states, for example, Maryland, Virginia, Delaware, and around Washington, D.C., there's been sort of a subtle uptick in computer model guidance over the past few hours, indicating we may see even more snow than forecast, for which reason this should be a very impactful system for a lot of people.
And this is throwing travel into chaos. We've had buildings closed. Have you seen snow and ice and plunging temperatures at this scale before?
We typically do see a few of these big, we call them kitchen sink storms every winter, but this one is sort of trekking over a much bigger footprint than is typical, just given the storm track. One other interesting element with this is that it's a very convective storm. What that means is that because there's warm air at the mid-levels, we're getting some upward movement in the clouds. That's enhancing precipitation rates, so heavier snow, heavier sleet, heavier freezing rain, but also producing thunder and lightning. So can you imagine? It's snowing like crazy, and suddenly you get a flash of lightning and a rumble of thunder. Or you might get freezing rain with temperatures around -5, -10 degrees, and thunder and lightning at the same time. So really, it's sort of a crazy storm, and one that's has probably another 24 hours left to go before things finally wind down, if that, maybe even longer.
Now let's turn to the UK. Travel's been thrown into chaos there as well. First due to snow, and now there are flood warnings there. Can you tell us what's happening?
Yeah, so you might be noticing it seems like everywhere in the Northern Hemisphere is getting a bout of significant winter weather in the United States and the UK as well, and most recently Germany and parts of Eastern Europe have been seeing significant winter weather. One thing that's sort of connecting them all is something called a negative Arctic oscillation. I know that sounds like a mouthful, but basically the Arctic oscillation is a figure that says how bottled up is all the cold air from the North Pole. When the Arctic oscillation is positive, it's like hugging all the cold air together and it doesn't really go anywhere. It stays over the Arctic where, honestly, we'd like it to be. But when the Arctic oscillation gets negative, it's like it's expanding its arms. It's letting all that cold air sag down the mid-latitudes, cause storms and cause winter weather. And that's what's happening right now. We have the most negative Arctic oscillation we've had so far this winter. And that's part of the reason why in the UK they're seeing serious winter storms, in Europe, but also in the United States too.
Is the worst of it over there in the UK?
For now, with this system, it's getting better, but I'm reluctant to say over, just given we're in a very active pattern, and I wouldn't be surprised to see additional snowstorms, additional winter storms in the next, say, week and a half to maybe 2 weeks as this pattern continues.
And these images that we're seeing here in Australia of snow, whiteouts and this ice, it's in stark contrast to our summer right now, and 2024 was our second hottest year. So, I mean, despite what you're experiencing in the US right now, will global temperatures remain high in 2025?
They will. You know, for the most part, every year is going to be warmer than the previous year as we continue adding greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. And a lot of people, especially, look, we all have a crazy uncle who believes in conspiracy theories and doesn't believe in climate change. And a lot of people are saying, hey, it's snowing widespread. That must negate climate change. And realistically, that can't be farther from the truth. One thing we're seeing is that as the climate warms, we're adding more moisture to the atmosphere. And so we're seeing less snow overall, but bigger snowstorms because the storms that still manage to be snow have that much more moisture to work with. The other thing we're seeing too is a wavier jet stream, thanks in large parts to human-induced climate change. And those wavier jet streams brew more significant storms. And so I wouldn't really point to snowstorms as sort of something that contrasts against climate change. It all fits together in the same puzzle, and it's no surprise that there in Australia you're seeing very significant warmth.
Meteorologist Matthew Capucci, thank you so much for joining us.
A pleasure.